happy now moment, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with you as always. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and an open heart to your listening experience, and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. While listening, you will be exposed to inspiring, empowering, and unifying perspectives that I'm highly confident will yield stellar results in your life if you opt to try them on for size. Also, if you're a longtime P-Head listener, you know I have been diligently working on producing episodes for my new late-night style, consciousness-elevating video talk show, Optimystic. Well, after a year plus in the making, I am thrilled to announce that we will be releasing Season 1's episodes weekly beginning March 15th, and I'm asking for your help to spread the love and to let your friends and family know about Optimystic when it's released. In exchange for taking a minute to share our Episode 1 teaser video on March 15th, or whenever you're hearing this, up through the end of April, we're giving you monthly memberships to not one, but two consciousness-expansive online content portals from two of my very favorite teachers and healers that are valued at over $50 a month, as well as entering your name into a drawing to win a free week at the Mystic Manor for a retreat immersion valued at $2,950, where the winner will be chosen in April. Otherwise, if you're interested in hearing more details about the rewards you'll receive for supporting, we'll send you a video that goes into detail when you text the word Mystic to the number 22999. You can also go to Optimystic.tv to see several other videos, including the Optimistic show trailer and two videos that discuss the week-long retreat immersion, as well as details of what the Mystic Manor immersion entails and how you can book a week to come stay with us, even if you don't win the raffle. All right, all you positive heads, welcome, welcome. It is a magical moment, a magical Monday, deep in the chrysalis over here at the Mystic Manor currently. Yeah, I say chrysalis or crisis, like I said last week. I'm choosing the story that this is a chrysalis and that we are going through a transformation. And what happens when we go through a transformation? Well, sometimes it looks ugly. And I know a lot of people out there are scared, and a lot of you are really, really, shaken by all the ripples that it's causing in your, with your work, and concerned about loved ones and family. And not saying I don't have any of those things, I do. And I also completely trust the process. And I urge each and every one of you to trust the process and find something to lighten up with, things maybe that make you laugh, things that bring joy. Whatever you do, don't get caught in the spiral of focusing on what's wrong and in fear. If you catch yourself doing that, snap out of it. Find something else to focus on. That's what we're doing around here. There's a lot of work going into, getting the show out there. As you guys know, we released Optimistic Episode 1, the new variety TV show, talk show, that we just released at Optimystic.tv. You can check it out. Episode 1 with Shaman Durek, and we just released Episode 2 with Sahara Rose, who absolutely incredible individual. I feel really confident. Episode 1 was our very first, stab at doing a show. And going to Sahara Rose's episode, it was actually several later. We're skipping around with the release. And I'm so impressed with how the camera crew and the editing and all that looked, I feel like, a lot more pro. So hope you guys can see the growth already from episode 1 to 2. And if you haven't checked it out yet, definitely go to Optimystic.tv. Check it out. I think you will appreciate what we're putting out there at this time. It's, really the evolution of this show in a lot of ways, with more elements and live music and live visionary art and interviews and retreat guests and all that stuff. So, check that out. And what we did yesterday after the live, after releasing, we're every Sunday at 11:11 a.m. Pacific time. you can go to optimistic.tv or YouTube and see, the premiere. And, what we decided to do yesterday when we released was to do a live Q&A with myself and the co-creator of Optimystic, Everett Lee-Sung, who, you guys haven't ever heard from him before. We've talked about bringing him on the podcast and we just haven't done it. And so it's him and I and the Priestess of Play, Petra, who helps to run the retreats around here. She asks some questions, takes some questions from live audience members. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to share that with you guys on today's podcast. As it was done on YouTube, and we're still building the following over there. So definitely go and subscribe over there. Me and Everett go into some really interesting things, the back history of the show and our own personal history. He was originally a P-head. That's how we met, through the show. So yeah, we go into a lot of cool stuff. So I'm going to share it. The audio is not quite as, loud and crystal clear as this because it was done on a different microphone from a distance, for YouTube, but I think you'll be able to hear it just fine. So with that being said, I'm just going to cut right over and share that with you guys. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you remember, it's all about the story you tell now. What is the story? I believe we're in a chrysalis. And what comes after a chrysalis? A butterfly. And you guys, we should be just holding down as much as possible that anchor of trust and belief that the universe is conspiring in our favor, because I'm sure so many around you are not, and many are very fearful and lashing out and reacting in ways that is not normal as we go through this transition. So we'll certainly be here holding it down and helping to maintain an elevated vibration. And I love you all so much. Hope you enjoy this Q&A after episode 2 of Optimystic. Be sure and check it out. And tell your friends, too, if you're really enjoying what we're doing, please share. It's taken so much to birth it into the world. And, now it's really all about helping to make people aware that it even exists. So if you can share on social media or to your family and friends, certainly a lot of people sitting at home watching things that fill them with fear. And I think you'll see both Sahara and Shaman Durek's episodes, are really inspiring. And there's a lot of messages, even though we recorded them months and months ago, that are, of course, synchronistically pertinent to what's going on right now. So hope you guys enjoy. Till next time, journey well. Love you all so much. All 5,000 of you. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone out there watching. Do we have people on? This is the first time we ever done this. Hello. Thank you all for being here. Rose.
Oh, you guys look gorgeous.
Thank you, darling. Yay. So hello, everybody. I'm Petra, the Priestess of Play of the Manor, and I am here with the famous show creators of Optimystic, Brandon.
My mom will confirm that I'm famous.
You made it.
Since the moment you get it.
And the magician behind the camera and the editing group and so much in the manor, Everett Lee-Sung. Come on, Brandon. We're in quarantine, so the audience is a little smaller today, but we're trying our best. They're 6 feet away. Don't worry, guys.
The Mystic Manor is now known as Quarantine Castle. Just update accordingly.
Adaptation. So, guys, wow. Episode 2, it's been, 9 months since you started this project?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, it depends when the project started, I don't know how far you want to go back. But maybe, what was it?
2018 is when we really started to get the momentum going.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2019,
early 2018.
January 1st. Yeah, early. Early. And then 2019, right on January 1st is when we saw the house.
Right.
And the whole thing for Mystic Manor started to unfold. And then we moved in and relationship first started to happen. And we became close friends after that. I'm not going to go into that part of the story, but I was
shout out Renee.
Shout out to Renee. I was meditating one day and I got this really powerful download of Everett, you and Brandon need to team up and create a show out of the podcast. We need to evolve the podcast. And that hit me really hard. And then immediately I called Brandon, was like, hey Brandon, I have this thing, we need to team up. And initially I came to Brandon with the idea of, hey, let's make this a travel show. Let's take the podcast to all the spiritual hotspots all around the world and do that. And so we attempted to do that in 2018, and we went to Costa Rica together for the Envision Festival and for the Superhero Academy Mastermind. And that in itself is where we met so many amazing key players that ended up either on the show or collaborating in some way, shape, or form with Mystic Manor. And so we tried to do the travel thing for a second.
We started down that path. I had kicked around from even before that, the idea of a late night style show. And then Everett's like, dude, travel show. And I'm like, ooh, the adventure in me is like, yeah, that might even be more fun. Like, cool. And then we even put together a little trailer all about the travel version. Let's test the waters in Costa Rica, just with filming in general. And then we realized, okay, it takes a lot to do a travel show. And, we just weren't prepared for the level of commitment. So it kind of got put on the...
I was just really on that trip. And then, so I get back from my travels at the end of 2018, December 30th. And we end up seeing each other for the first time after like about half a year or something like that. And we get to talking about the show, and like we get all excited
there
about
was some synchronicity there.
Yeah, please tell that part.
Yeah, so it was December 30th. It was that, that week out of no time, where no one knows what to do with themselves. I really am such a sort of doer and busy person. I don't spend a lot of time listening to other podcasts, but more producing, 5 a week with Positive Head, and little to do for once. And I'm like, okay, I'll check this out with you. And we go and we watch the video version of it. And I noticed there's like 5 million views or something. And the topic is super interesting. It's Billy Corgan talking about seeing a shapeshifter. That's what my son Bradley wanted me to hear about. And of course, I instantly, as soon as I see it, go back to, as a generator in human design, I always will respond to things, right? So you give me input and I'll always like, oh, but what if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? That's just sort of the makeup of who I am. And so instantly it triggered that part of myself. And it's like, oh yeah, the late night style show that's been kicking around for 3 years now. Oh yeah, the travel version that me and Everett flirted with and then decided, realized it was too much. Now I'm all in an American flag behind him in this particular episode. And I'm like, oh, I want to see some aesthetic, I want to see something vibey. I want to see something that I instantly start thinking, well, what would my version be like? It would have it would have art, it would have vibe, it would have music, it would have, and
of course I'm standing right there and I'm like, oh, we can.
Yeah.
We can make it really
you
sexy.
Actually contacted me. He'd been in Estonia for months and months and months. We had hadn't really seen each other in a while. And literally I get in this excited state like I can tend to do, like, oh man, maybe it's time to start thinking about this again. And then Everett contacted that excited state. And then it was like, we'll do it. Let's move near the LAX airport. Venice would be ideal. It's only 10 minutes away. We can have all the biggest names always travel through LA. It's much easier than a travel version stationary. And, I hadn't put all the pieces together, how I would afford it, how I'd pay for it, how I would tie all the pieces together. And then I woke up at 5 a.m. on December 31st with it just in my head. Like the Positive Head podcast listeners have been asking for years for you to do retreats. What if you get a property big enough to have room for them to come regularly? And that can also help fund the property. And you tie them in as a segment of the show, which is this fan co-creation element, which I love. The more you can blur that line. And it was just like in my head at 5 a.m, hours after doing to sleep. I go to Craigslist. I search for 6-bedroom or bigger houses. First thing that comes up is a spaceship looking house. I'm like, that's it. Now keep in mind the house I lived in for 10 years up to this point, same way. First search, first result, first one I looked at. I lived in it for 10 years. So literally that repeated itself.
That's so magical.
Yeah. And
if you need some help finding real estate,
Craigslist, first search result. Saves a lot of time. So I literally call the ad and I get, Rich, the owner of the property. Shoot, my assistant must have posted it without telling me. And then they were traveling. So they put my phone number instead of theirs. They normally field this stuff. Him and I happened. He's like, okay, you know what? I'll actually meet you tomorrow on January 1st and at the property and we'll talk more. And so celebrated New Year's Eve, January 1, 2019. Me and Everett, we came over here. We're like, okay. We even have video. If you go on optimistic.tv and see the Mystic Manor page, that first video has footage from that first day here at the Mystic Manor. Us touring it, saying, okay, this is where we'll put the studio when we get this place. This is where, having no idea if I could still pull it all off, by the way. It was like being it to see it for sure. So, and here we are, a year plus later. It took from that January all the way to March 15th till we had everything together and edited and ready to actually do a release. And, here we are and now releasing episode 2. And
And before we continue on, I'd like to take a quick moment to announce to you guys that we have a new sponsor of the Positive Head podcast, Mack Weldon. As you guys know, I've been very selective about sponsors over the years, only working with a select few that I truly align with. So when Mack Weldon first reached out to me about sponsoring Positive Head, and I saw that they were claiming to make intelligently designed men's basics such as underwear, socks, t-shirts, sweatpants, made from premium fabrics that are also super comfy, I was intrigued. The reason being is because the running joke in my family my whole life has been that you will never see me in anything that isn't super cozy, which, if you ask my mom, has led to many, many embarrassing fancy restaurant dinners with me wearing old sweatpants. So I was intrigued enough that I ordered 4 items to try them out. And when I received them, I knew I had instantly found a new favorite go-to for my basics. My mom is going to be ecstatic to hear their claim that their Ace sweatpants are a modern upgrade for your favorite sweatpants. It's a totally legitimate claim. They are definitely way more comfy and stylish than my old ones, and I've never looked better at dinner. I intend personally to order them in every color, and of course, since they are super high quality, they do cost a little more than your Walmart standard basics. However, luckily for all UP heads, they are giving all Positive Head listeners 20% off when you go to mackweldon.com and use the code POSITIVEHEAD, all one word. That's spelled MACKWELDON.com. I highly recommend trying them out or ordering them for your partner or spouse. You have my 111% guarantee that your mother or mother-in-law will thank you profusely at the next family dinner.
And the time it took from it to be an idea that one night to then it being real was like instant.
I remember waking you up on my couch the next morning. Hey, look at this house I found. It's like 7 a.m. He's like, look at the house. This is where we're going to move in. We're going to get, and he's like, what?
Literally, we're talking about the thing. I go to bed. I close my eyes, and then I open my eyes as Brandon kicks open the door with his laptop. I found the house. I found the place. This is it. And I'm like, what? Okay, I guess this is happening now.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
You never heard this story?
I heard it in New Year's, but like the whole story, and it reminds me of what you guys were talking about in episode 2 with like the alignment and the flow, and it's just like how instantly things can happen. That's so amazing.
Yeah, it's a great example of when something's really like meant that it just unfolds in a very natural progression, and you can see forces conspiring, and that doesn't mean stop every time you hit a wall. Yeah. But I've noticed a lot of times you'll get that extra push of like fortuitous, synchronistic behavior, especially early on in a journey, that is kind of like, okay, we're going to wink at you, show you this is all meant, even down to like, January 1, how symbolic, that we set foot, it's like, okay, fresh year. And that whole year, and since then became optimistic, and all about focusing on that.
I love that.
And it has been such a journey of embodying being an optimistic as we've been building this entire community, home, media company, talk vital to us individually growing ourselves, and then collectively as a team and as a family, and putting that out. And so even watching this episode today, there were so many synchronicities and so many reminders of just words of wisdom and these amazing gems to be like, oh yeah, that's right.
It was all about dealing with criticism in today's episode, and literally the last 16 hours were very intense for me, as you guys know who are here, and dealing with criticism and dealing with challenge, dealing with multiple other people, and I won't go into all that story, but I was like, okay, I don't remember what was said in the Sahara Rose episode or monologue from months and months back. But as I sat down to watch it just a few minutes ago with all of you, I'm like, I already know, universe, hit me. I know it's going to be me teaching me something. It's going to be synchronistic. And of course, it's like, first thing is like, I got a 1-star review. Someone's criticizing me. And like, okay, here we go.
Wow.
And so, yeah, but it's all divine design. And I'm here for it. And I think always being in that state, even if you get reactive to things, which, yesterday I felt like I got more reactive than I would like to with things that transpired. And then it's always like, okay, great. You handled it however you handled it, and it's perfect too. And now's another chance to always reassess. And how can you pick it up? Because a lot of times I think what happens is we have lots of wins. For example, I know I've had a lot of wins with not reacting in recent months. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, yeah, Brandon, you're doing so much better with ever reacting to criticism or things that agitate you or seem unfair or unreasonable. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, hold on, you just fell off the wagon a little bit. Okay, it's easy to beat ourselves up, We're really hard on ourselves. And I think it's important to say, our evolution is a spiral, right? We're going to circle back on things that we think we've overcome for further clarification a lot of times. And so definitely dealt with a lot of that.
Yeah, it's so crazy, the synchronicity, and I love how you shared with the audience, like, this is such a co-creative space, right? And I've been with the Mystic Manor since October of last year, and I was leading the retreats, and I would notice that the soul share guests, whatever they were sharing live, was exactly what the retreat guests and the house was going through that week. And we're noticing that with the launch of the episode again, now it's the same theme, right? Would you like to share on some of that, Everett, of like some synchronicities and lessons that you've seen with it?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been a great lesson of humility, this entire process, right? Like, for as much as we want to preach and teach and share, we're always students as well. I've been saying a lot, always a master, always a student, right? So always being receptive to the information that's coming, but also being in that empowered space to share the information that we know is inherently true. And so being in that perfect pocket right in the middle has always been such a growth in the whole process. Going back to the day we shot the Sahara episode, it was such a time ago. I don't quite remember many synchronicities from that one, but as it comes back around today, really be understanding the differences of the doshas, right? Understanding that we all have our unique elements and our unique ways of processing the world and experiencing the world, and understanding too that we're all different and unique in those own special ways. We're all very important pieces of the puzzle.
VIP.
Shout out Damiana. But yeah, understanding that, especially in the midst of fear or frustration or obstacle or challenge.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's been coming up for the house, especially during this quarantine, especially during this time, is like a lot of fear that's just in the collective, that's also seeping into the house, and really remembering to stay centered in that process. And for these lessons to also come back around in its wonderful spiral, especially as spoken by the people who have been creating it, it's like, wow, like, thank you, past self, for dropping in that time capsule of information for it to then come back at the perfect time synchronistically. Like,
you're gonna need that
later, man, like, your triggers are your treasures. Remember that one?
It's like, makes me think of, I quoted Mother Teresa in this episode.
Yeah.
And she said, may I seek more to understand than to be understood. And I think that's a really powerful piece of advice and perspective to take on. And it's so easy to get into, like, even for me, the last 16 hours or so, I had, 2 different incidences that triggered me. And what I came away from, one of them especially, was really out of bounds. It was so irrational and illogical, and coming from someone who is in a deep place of fear, obviously based off of the state of the world and the coronavirus. And I had become their target of, I was the root of all the problems, for something that was just so irrational. And then I went into another right after that, and that really triggered me because it was so intense, and it was like there was a lot of harassment involved by the person, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I went straight from that to another sort of criticizing moment that I was particularly weak from my last like battle. And so, you know, I didn't deal with that as well as I'd like. And, but then just understanding like this morning as I kind of have sat into it and integrated about me being right. A lot of my anger comes from like, or reactivity is me being right. And or them being so unfair or irrational, when really the lesson is they're supposed to be that way, because the real gift is how are you going to deal with irrationality and unfairness coming at you, right? That's really what's supposed to be happening for me, as I realized in that moment. It's like, oh, this was actually designed for me to see how I deal with what I am perceiving as unfair. And irrational.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really, it doesn't matter who's right or wrong, because we get so caught up. I know me, it's like, you know, what? This is so unfair. You're so wrong and I'm so right. And let me show you how, and let me prove all the points. And here's where, you know, I can got all my bullet points of how I can prove it. And we're really, that's not what is the whole thing is about.
It's not.
But it then can take, like in my case, it took a while, you know, 16 hours to even say, okay, that's really what's going on here. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where, you know, it's especially during times like this, like, okay, we are going through a mass shift right now where our comforts and, you know, like our knowns are all being shifted right now. There's just so many unknowns, right? And so what does that do to our nervous system? We go into fight or flight a lot of times. And I mean, I was there this morning when some of this came back around, and you know, I was just like, all right, guys, it's like, you're triggered. Like, is this really the right time to be talking about this?
Right.
And it's totally irrational. Doesn't, right? Like, we're panicking, we're hurt. It's like when a dog, right, is feeling threatened, it's just going to go at you, even though it loves you. Yeah. So like taking that sacred pause, like the world is in a sacred pause right now. It's not our time to react and go crazy, right? It's like going from the head to the heart. Like, what am I feeling?
Yeah.
And I think it's also like, as that's happening, because it is going to happen inevitably, right? You can't really suppress it. And so as it's happening, it's been great to also have these tools to identify what's happening in real time. Yeah. Right. So we're in the moment, we're feeling really heated and it's all coming out. But then there's also moments where we can take a step back or like a higher perspective and look at it. Right. And I also know like Brandon's very fire. He's very pitta, right? And so to see like when he gets in that state, he fire and he just goes, right? I'm very vata, very air. Right. And so if I want to meet him there at that point with a lot of air, when you get a lot of air and a lot of fire, that just creates a huge firestorm, right? And so seeing that real time, I know the best way to soothe is not to fan the fire, but to really calm it down. Right. And so to really kind of take that approach while it's happening is the best way to really hold space for the people that you love. And I'm always like reminding myself too of the people that we are around, that we choose to be around, that we love. We need to trust them to point out our blind spots. Ooh. Right? Like the reason why we're choosing to surround ourselves with people that we love and trust is so that we can trust them when they're saying, hey, there's a blind spot. And then even when it's difficult, even when it's hard, even when it's super fiery or anything, you know, to be able to look at it from that higher perspective. And, you know, one thing that Brandon has always has taught me and has always preached and continued to say is, you know, it's always us looking at ourselves. We're always, right? It's always us looking back at ourselves in every reflection in every person. And to see that perspective, especially when it's difficult and fearful and, you know, frustrating, to be like, wow, like this is me teaching me a lesson on the other side. How can I love that person? How can I really see that and approach that from a place of love?
Wow. What helps you when you're like in it, you know, like, can you give our viewers some practical tips on like what helps you get into that state and remember that?
First for me, it's breathing. It's really being aligned with the breath, right? Because when we're in that fight or flight or that triggered mode, our breath starts to shorten up and we just get really tense. We get really tense. We don't, you know, and so for me, it's really connecting to the breath and taking a deep breath and a moment to pause. Because a lot of times, sometimes when I'm triggered, my first reaction is to act out in anger or defense or to throw a fucking dagger, right? Excuse my language, to throw a dagger, right? So taking that breath allows for me to really pause for a moment and drop into myself And as I'm taking that breath, I'm consciously dropping into my heart and really breathing through it. So it's almost like even if I'm getting all of this negativity, this density thrown my way, by just taking that deep breath, I'm almost transmuting that through my body and into my heart. And that's when I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's right. I remember who I am, even in the midst of all of this, and a lot of times I'm just reminded, like, whatever rises, love that.
Shout out Matt Con.
And that's a Matt Con thing coming in the next episode 3. Matt Con's coming through.
A little preview
A little preview there for that one.
If I can add real quick to the breath thing, one thing that I realized, and someone I think pointed it out to me a long time ago, and it really rings true and feels true when I implement it, is if I'm in a state of anxiety or anger or triggered, whatever, if you breathe, you notice you're going to be shallow breathing in that moment.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So if you think of everything as a reflection, and the symbology is so incredibly deep in our reality, I don't even think we begin to peel back the layer of symbology that's happening in every little thing. I think we get to the other side, we'll be like, wow, you mean when I dropped that spoon, it was tied to this, which was this. Like, I mean, I think it goes like crazy deep. And so everything is somehow symbolic. And so if I'm upset and talking really fast and I'm barely breathing, or then I just expanded my ability to cope with whatever energy I'm dealing with. Yeah. From that to that, right? Ooh. It's like that much more room to carry the density, the load, right? And actually process it. And I had a friend one time pointing it out to me as well. And this was actually when I did, speaking of plant medicine, ayahuasca journey many, many years ago. First time, I remember I got into a state of fear. And I was so in my head in that moment and imagining bad things. And I remember, Craig, shout out to one of the first episodes, Pablo Miller, if you guys go and check it out, way back, like episode 6. I remember, and I probably talk about it in that episode, I bet, but I was in this state of fear, and he said, look, you're in your head right now. And if you and let's just focus for a minute, moving your awareness, which is always up here for most of us, right? And let's move it. Let's imagine a string down to our heart and moving our awareness down into our heart. He's like, now, not only is that deep breathing expansion happening, but you've also now moved your center of gravity from here to here, which has a whole different way of processing whatever's coming up. It's like a totally different mechanism to deal with it. And it's way bigger and stronger and more robust to deal with Aya. I was like, whoa, I'm really feeling myself. It's almost like my eyes were here and not here, in a sense. You just had your whole center of gravity here. And it felt so different as to how I could process what was coming up.
Wow. I love that you said that your eyes are here. And it's like all of a sudden we're looking through the eyes of love.
Right.
And that really all that is. Marianne Williamson talks about that, and this is like one of my favorite just ways to look at life. Everything is either love or a call for love.
Nice.
Yeah, love
that. So simple. So yeah, I would love to speak to.
Do we want to? Yeah. Do we want to maybe look at a question? I can see people. It's a little far away from us, but I can see like there's text.
Yeah. Eddie, you want to throw us a question for the audience?
It's kind of funny. You guys have intuitively been answering some of the questions.
Really?
Co-creation.
Cool. One of the best ones was when someone brought up how everything can be so tense during this like isolating period and lockdown, which you guys already spoke to.
Yeah.
A really good one though, which was asked by Damiana. She asked like, what? And you guys spoke to this a bit earlier, but what's the origin story of Optimystic? What's the why that really keeps this going?
Nice. The why.
Behind the logistics. And
synchronicity. Why.
And that was in the thing in the episode as well. It's like when you're so busy climbing the ladder and it's like, challenge, hurdle. Like, what is the why that keeps you connected to this place? Because honestly, at any time we could have quit, we could have left, but we're somehow still here, right? Through all the fires. Yeah. What's keeping you here, Everett?
Yeah.
What's your why?
Ooh.
This is a kapha thing.
Conscious breathing. Such thing here. Like the why for me is the people. It's the soul fam. So that's kind of where I'm going to start with it. It really started with my love and connection and friendship with Brandon, and the community of the Positive Head, right? Like at one, like, it was just me as this, like, you know, kid who discovered superpowers all alone. And I was like, where are all of the Avengers or Ascenders now, as everyone's calling it. But yeah, so it was really seeking community of like-minded people that were very much in resonance. And since Brandon and I started this, we really had the intention of creating a lighthouse that is a magnet and a safe place and a container for playground by which everything that I wanted was reflected. And that was infinite possibility.
Aww.
That was creative play and productive play. That was being in flow state all the time. And also to be around people that were authentic with themselves, that were committed to their self-growth. Because I love that. I love being in that energy and in that container. And for me as a director and more so as like a play, for me was just be really tapping into my inner child. Which is the why. Like, I just want to be like a fun loving kid all the time that's in creation mode. And so for me, that why, that's the biggest why here, is to not really have this end goal, but to be in that flow of being exactly where I need to be in every single moment, of being happiness, of being love, not chasing love or seeking epic love, but being that and embodying that. And so to cultivate a space and a community and a home that is all about that is the why for me. And throughout the process, I have fallen in love with so many amazing people. All of you guys out there, I've just fallen so deeply in love with the tribe and the community.
Oh my gosh. You so bring that here. Like, he is a magician in all the things. Like,
True that.
Seen and unseen. Yeah. And I also want to acknowledge that you guys made a huge transition when you jumped, like, you know, you had your Dharma and then like the switch in the career, right? You guys both had stability in your own ways, and you decided to jump that ship and jump onto the spaceship of literally the unknown, right? Like, living community for the first time and like running it like this and having all these different things. Wow. What keeps you going, Brandon? Because I know it hasn't been easy.
It's been everything it's supposed to be, and easy has not been the top thing that it's been. And I know my soul wouldn't have it any other way, which is why I signed up for it. It's definitely felt like chrysalis kind of time, and I feel like the coronavirus even is that for mankind. It's like I saw it the other day say chrysalis or crisis, and it's like, we're in a chrysalis. This is what happens. It's the other side of this is a butterfly. And so for me, it's felt like, what is it, 15 months of that pretty intensely, from that January 1st 2019. It's been so much. And the why is something that I've touched on before with Positive Head. It's the same why. And I've done a lot of things. I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life, from 8 years old selling candy door to door, and people would be like, "Oh, is this for your baseball team?" And I'd be like, "No, it's for my pocket." And so I was always that kid. I was always like coming up with like little businesses and ways to make money. And I was so passionate about spirituality and the ultimate nature of reality, and my friends and family's ears were bleeding for many years. And I just needed another outlet to share, what I had to, share my truth and get it out there. And then I've had some success in business and certainly some wins in my life. And nothing has felt more rewarding than the feedback that I've received from, Positive Head listeners saying, "Oh my gosh, I tuned into this." And, if I'm ever feeling down or anything, I can just go to iTunes and read reviews. And I'm like, "Oh, wow. Okay. I've actually done something of worth in my life. I've changed this person's life in a dramatic way as they're reflecting back to me." And so to me, that became like the drug, like, fuels me in the good way. Like, oh my gosh, how do I do more of it? How do I teach best what I most need to learn on another level? And being someone who is always the eternal optimist, seeing like, the sky's the limit. It's like, okay, the podcast is awesome. And wow, I'd love something with, I'm so into, even before the Mystic Manor, if you're at my old house, it's very vibey. Same with Everett, it's like, we're really into, in another timeline, I could definitely be into being an interior designer or designing properties or all that. That feels really fun and joyful to me. So if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others.
Oh my God.
And I always add to that, the reason I believe that holds true is because there are no others. And so once you realize that's the game, okay, how do I do more of that? Because all the joy, all the abundance, all the, all the happiness, all the peace, it's going to come as a byproduct of doing that. So that's my why, is to, I feel like I've tapped into my own unique vibration. That's also part of a collective vibration. It's like, it's unique and it's the same. It's like, call it Christ consciousness, call it Buddha consciousness, call it, even you think of Jesus. I think when he talked about, I'm coming back, Jesus was a man. I don't think he's coming back. I think what was prophesied is the Christ consciousness is coming back to the planet.
Yes.
And that is a state of being, of knowing of I and the Father are one,
The wholeness.
it's all an extension of me. And I feel like I've tapped into that in a powerful way that has altered my lives. It's started to alter many other people's lives. And I just want to spread that good virus, I mean, the synchronicity of the show releasing on March 15th, the same day LA went into lockdown where we're located because of a virus. And for years I've been saying, I feel like I'm a good virus, I've been just like telling that story.
Antivirus.
So, yeah, right. It's like, it's spreading optimism and truth and understanding, like, it's all an extension of you and it's all happening for love. And that's the why. And how do the more people I can bring to that awareness, the more everything I believe is going to improve. So it's, and if I bring that awareness to millions of people and you bring it to one person, it doesn't mean that it's any less important or valid. Like, who's more important, Gandhi or Gandhi's grandmother? I heard Charles Eisenstein say that one time. And it's a great point. Like, had she not been who she was and nurtured him and brought him up in the way he is, would he have had the impact he did? So it's not about, oh my gosh, I got to have this massive show. I got to, yes, you can aim and strive and for things like reaching a large audience, and that there's nothing wrong with that, but don't be attached to it. Who's going to find it is going to find it. If one person listens to this, it's me, us three, and my mom, cool. One person I know has benefited from it, me. So if 100 million people hear it, even better. But just doing it for, like we talked about in today's show, the intention of it. What is the intention? I want the right people to find this message and this vibrational resonance that's being put out into the world, and the aim and intention is that it shifts people in a way that brings more optimism and love into their lives. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
I love
Awesome.
that.
That was great.
So thank you for everyone who's found us. Are there any more questions from the audience?
There are actually plenty, yeah. One of them was a quick follow-up, is why Mystic and Optimistic?
That's a great question. Does anyone else want to answer it for me?
The magician himself?
Watch the Shaman Durek episode and it'll all make sense.
Brandon's such a wordsmith. I think that's one of his many superpowers, and it just made sense going from the positive head to optimistic. And I feel like we all here are superheroes and legends, not just here but everywhere in the world. And so to include like that mystical element to the whole thing, magic is real, everything is possible, infinite possibility. To me, that's where the mystic comes into optimistic.
We're exploring things on this show, like I threw out Shaman Durek. I mean, literally on episode 1, he's talking to the retreat guests. Hold on, let me tap into your guides. Okay, they're telling me this. Okay, they're telling me this. My brother's in the audience. He starts talking about someone on the other side that's closely connected to him in a very incredible way. I've seen him make, and I talk in episode 1 about some prediction or some claim mystical things he threw out on Positive Head when he was first on it years ago, and then how I validated them afterwards in a very trippy way. I share that story. That's all super mystical. I mean, Durek claims that he gets up in the morning and there's a being standing in front of him that he's training with for the day. That's, like it's like his normal world. There's a lot of people claiming these types of experiences. Part of the show, in addition to helping people to shift perspectives in order to get more out of their life, in ways of happiness, peace, abundance, which is really my jam primarily. There's a lot of people in that same arena who are and of course, we're having a lot of synchronistical experiences that I share and on the podcast, and you'll hear on this show. And there's people who are having wild mystical experiences. Like, oh yeah, I'm literally bilocated in another timeline as I'm Brandon, and then I'm also someone else. I know people who are having those experiences. I'm not saying 100% whether it is or isn't true. I can only speak to what's happened to me, but I'm certainly wide open to it, and I've seen some pretty wild things myself. So it's all pretty, like, I believe reality is stranger than fiction. This is all more mystical and magical than we ever realized, and we were sold on a story that it wasn't. Therefore, because we're such powerful mystical creators, abracadabra, I create as I speak. Oh, it's not magical and mystical? Abracadabra, it's not, And so that's what I think the world is waking up to in remembering that, we're actually all mystical, magical creatures coming back into that childlike wonder and play of, oh, cool, I'm going to be a wizard. Great, I'm going to be an elf. Yeah, put on your cape. Yeah. That's what it's coming back to. That's what my friend across the room's in a magic suit right now, pretty much. I mean, it looks like he stepped right out of Narnia. That's my world now, and I'm sticking with it. It's so much more fun than the cubicle, and not to put anything down to a cubicle. It has its place. I've been in many, and I want to help empower people and invite them into that world, the one Bible verse I quote, lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. It's let's all be poster adults for childhood. Let's come back to that. Divine creatures exist and all of that stuff. And once you open up your mind to it, I always say, just buckle up your seatbelt because you'll be shown. You'll start seeing things that will rock your world.
Such a Brandonism. But yeah, I also wanted to add to that too is, one of the big whys that Brandon and I had and connected on is we wanted to be the bridge to everything that was mystical to everybody else in the world, right? Because sometimes it can be so polarizing or just so up in the clouds or so magical that it's kind of off-putting to some people, right? And so I've always really loved exploring the polarity of that world, but also grounding it in with practical knowledge, with practical delivery, right? So that it can be received by people that are so far removed from it, right? And that part has been so important, so vital in my growth, and I think everybody's growth here is really understanding that, right? It's not this or that, it's this and right in the center point of it. And so for as magical and mystical as we can get and want to be, which is infinite, there's also that element of anchoring it in and grounding that.
We're so human.
We came to Earth for a reason. And we came to Earth for a reason. And so it's fun to pair the culture, the way that the content is shot and expressed, all within that center point of the Vesca Pisces.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. Should we take one more question? You guys on for one more?
Yeah, let's do one more.
All right, perfect. The next
one, mystical stories.
So they also ask, one, have you read it? And two, do you have any book recommendations? One specifically that has really changed your life.
Ooh, nice.
Want to go first?
Yeah. So I haven't finished the book. I have the Audible version. What was it? Journey of Souls was a really good one for me. Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. Yeah. Is it? Yeah. Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. And then also The Surrender Experiment by Mickey Singer. Those two hit me at the perfect time that really allowed for me to, and I'll touch on, so Journey of Souls was about past lives and also where our souls exist in between lives. And so to not look at my life just as this one lifetime, but to expand it beyond that and see the soul journey, the soul arc of what we're going through. And so understanding that, really accepting that and surrendering to that and allowing myself to absorb that information allowed for me to look at this life with less pressure.
And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the Optimystic vortex at calendly.com/talk with Brandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.